Hey there, this is the State by State podcast, and this is episode number 1 on Alabama. Just a heads up, some of the information in this episode is going to be the same in other states as well, and some of it's just federal law, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of it, but just know that some of it applies to other states as well. Alabama is the 24th largest state in the U.S. with a population of 4,800,000 people. It has approximately 4,244,000 guns, about the same as Spain, which has a population of 46.5 million. It issues the 12th most concealed carry permits. In 2005, Alabama had a gun death rate of 16 out of every 100,000 people dying. This made it the 6th highest in the country, with 736 deaths. In 2015, it went up to the 3rd highest, with a rate of 19.6 or 958 deaths. In 2016, it went up to the 2nd highest, with a rate of 21.5 or 1,046 deaths. Alabama is considered the easiest state to buy a gun in. 51.7% of the population owns a gun. In Section 26 of the Alabama Constitution, it says that every citizen has a right to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state. Section 27 says the legislator shall provide for the safekeeping of the arms, ammunition, and military records, banners, and relics of the state. Alabama passed the first all-gun economic ban in 1893. The ban placed extremely heavy business or transactional taxes on the sale of handguns in an attempt to put handguns out of the reach of people of color and poor whites. In Alabama, no person can carry a pistol on private property not belonging to them without a concealed weapon permit or permission. Anyone carrying a rifle or shotgun walking cane can be fined $500 to $1,000 and be imprisoned for up to 2 years. It's unlawful for anyone to have a firearm in their possession, person, or vehicle while attending any demonstration in a public place or within 1,000 feet of a demonstration. You can't discharge a firearm in a building or a form of transportation. Here are some places you can't carry firearms without permission: the police, sheriff, or highway patrol stations, jail or other premises, facilities providing care for psychiatric, mental, or emotional disorders, courthouses, buildings including the DA's office, any facility hosting an elementary or secondary school athletic event that does not involve guns without a permit. As of 2001, licenses from another state for handguns will be recognized. As of 2007, non-residents of Alabama can purchase rifles, shotguns, and ammo. In 2013, a bulk of gun laws were passed. Some of the laws previously stated will stay the same, while others had changed. Employers can't punish workers for having weapons in their cars, and employees can sue if they're punished. You can now carry guns into sporting events for schools if you have a concealed carry permit, and this also applies for special sporting events, but not in a building that limits access, like with metal detectors or signs. It made Alabama a shall-issue state opposed to a may-issue state. It limits the circumstances under which sheriffs can deny a permit to someone with reasonable suspicion that they would use it unlawfully. The reasons include mental illness, false information on an application, convicted of a violent crime, certain drug-related crimes, or sexual offenses involving victims under the age of 12. Employers can't be sued for gun-related damages on their property. This makes them completely immune. Guns are obviously still barred from government buildings, detention facilities, and mental health facilities. There's no need to have a permit to keep an unloaded gun in your car. It must be unloaded, locked, and out of reach, though. You can carry a pistol without a permit unconcealed. Police officers can stop and question you, though. You do not need a permit to purchase a gun. You do not need to register your gun. You do not need a permit to carry a rifle or a shotgun, but you do need one to carry a handgun. Open carry is legal in Alabama. Background checks are not required for private sales, but licensed dealers are required to run a background check. It is unlawful to sell a gun to a prohibited person. There is no assault weapon law in Alabama. The only gun illegal in Alabama is one disguised as a walking cane. Alabama enacts the Castle Doctrine and no net loss. If you have been convicted of a violent crime or domestic abuse, you can't own a gun. There is no waiting period to purchase a gun. There's no law restricting multiple firearm purchases at once. You can carry a gun in a school with a license. This applies to public schools, K through 12. There is no law restricting guns on college campuses. Buying a gun in Alabama is pretty simple. You walk in, you fill out a form. Any state ID will do for long guns, and Alabama ID for handguns, though. The background check is done on the phone or computer. If everything looks good, you can leave with a gun the same day. If you have a very common name, such as John Smith or Mary Jones, you may have to wait up to 3 days. Title II firearms require fingerprints, an FBI background check, ATF approval, sign-off from the sheriff, police chief, etc., a tax, and may take months to reach final approval. Sometimes the tax can be more than the additional cost. Most guns are Title I, and as an AL.com article shows, they can be purchased in about 18 minutes or less. The FBI said that in 2015, over 308,000 NICS checks were run in Alabama. If you're buying a gun on a website, it must be shipped to an FFL holder who will charge a fee to run a background check. Other sites like Craigslist let people meet up to swap guns for a trade or to sell them for cash. The only law governing those sales says you can't knowingly sell to a prohibited person. You are not required to run a background check, though. Michael Kenneth McClendon killed 10 people and wounded 6 on March 10, 2009. He first shot his mother and their 3 dogs and burned down her house. He then drove to his maternal grandmother's house and killed her, his uncle, 2 cousins, and others. He then shot and killed himself before police could reach him. He shot his uncle's neighbors, including a 4-month-old who survived. One of his cousins was only 15. An 18-month-old girl was also killed at his uncle's house. He was engaged in a shootout with the police after he shot the Geneva police chief in the arm. The shooting spree lasted an hour before McClendon was found dead. In 2009, Amy Bishop, a biology professor at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, was denied tenure. Almost a year later, on February 12, 2010, during a meeting, she stood up and fired a handgun, killing 3 and injuring 3 others. That was half the room. Witnesses said she went down the row and aimed at each person's head. She attempted to commit suicide but was out of ammo or her gun jammed. She was arrested shortly after and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. After the shooting, other incidents were given another look. In 1986, Amy Bishop shot and killed her brother, but it was ruled an accident. She and her husband were suspects of a bombing attempt targeting an old supervisor at a previous job. Her supervisor received 2 pipe bombs that failed to explode after Bishop resigned. Witnesses said Amy Bishop's husband told them he wanted to shoot, stab, or strangle Paul Rosenberg, the supervisor, but there was not enough evidence to file charges. In 2002, she punched a woman who got the last booster seat at an IHOP. I can't help but wonder if these incidents would have prevented her from getting a gun had a permit been mandatory to purchase it or a background check been required. Late in the afternoon on August 20, 2016, Derek Dearman drove to Citronelle, Alabama from Leakesville, Mississippi. He killed Chelsea Reed, who was 22 at the time and 5 months pregnant. Justin Reed, her 23-year-old husband, Robert Brown, who was 26, Joseph Turner, his ex-girlfriend's brother, and his wife, Shannon Randall. He used 2 firearms and an axe that were left behind when he kidnapped his ex-girlfriend, Lynetta Lester, and her 4-month-old baby. He took them to his hometown in Leakesville, Mississippi, where they were released unharmed and then fled to Citronelle and notified authorities. Dearborn turned himself in back in Leakesville after his dad convinced him to. The day after the murders, he blamed his meth use and said his victims were friends. He had quite the criminal record in Mississippi, including charges of disorderly conduct, telephone harassment, resisting arrest, and burglary. Lynetta Lester had previously left him due to an abusive relationship. Last year in 2017, Alabama voted on a number of bills. One would have allowed people to carry a handgun without getting a concealed carry permit. The bill cleared the Senate in early 2017 by a vote of 25-8, but the House did not vote on it after a public hearing where 5 law enforcement officers spoke out against it. Police said it's important for their safety, especially during traffic stops, and that permit fees help support funding for sheriff departments. In 2015, the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that the law banning open carry on someone else's property is unconstitutional. On December 12, 2017, Alabama elected Democrat Doug Jones over Roy Moore. Gun rights groups and activists threw support behind Roy Moore and spoke a lot about how Doug Jones would infringe on Alabama's Second Amendment rights. Doug Jones has said he wants to enforce current laws, but also enforce background checks and still make sure that law-abiding citizens don't face errors when purchasing guns. As of this recording, 45 people have been killed by a gunshot wound in Alabama so far this year. Thank you so much for listening. This is my first podcast, and I'm still pretty nervous, but I hope you enjoyed this and will stick around for me to get better. Fingers crossed. Don't forget to subscribe to the State by State podcast so you don't miss an episode. They'll be immediately downloaded to your feed every Friday. Also, if you could, please leave a review if you like this episode, but if you didn't, just ignore this part. Thanks. Bye.